about the businesses that are in town currently can tend to draw more people. And like you mentioned, Time Out Cafe, and I don't know how much you're involved with social media, but I tend to be probably too much. But there's a lot of talk, Time Out Cafe, and it's getting talked up, So if maybe I have a business and I'm thinking to open it somewhere, and I'm gonna see that, like, you know what? People are really excited about this in New Milford. Maybe I should look at getting into New Milford, because New Milford's pretty exciting. So I think maybe the governing body could try to do things to make New Milford exciting. I was talking to someone the other day, and when we were on the green team, we kicked around the idea of doing like a farmer's market. And the logistics of a farmer's market are a little complicated. I'm a part owner of a small farm out in Pennsylvania. I was involved with getting a farmer's market started out there, and it's tough. It's touch and go. A lot of them fail. But things like that get people excited, gets people from out of town to come into town. The movie nights this summer, I think, were a great thing, and it got a lot of people going, and the weather didn't really cooperate, but the turnout still was really good. Next year it'll be even better. And the same thing, we talked to some people there, and there were people from out of town, so we're getting people to come to town. So the more that we can get people to come to town, I think the more that's going to attract the businesses to the town, because those people are the spenders, and I think that's what we need, to build that excitement, through little things here, little things there. With fire awareness, usually has a pretty good turnout. National Night Out, I think we do a really good job in town. I've been involved with the recycling committee on that for several years now, and the turnout there was amazing. Again, it got rained out, but more events that we can do and draw people to town, I think that'll in turn draw the businesses to town. At least that's what I would imagine would happen. I think if I got excited about it, and everyone else, it's easy to sit at home and buy stuff from Amazon. I do it all the time. But it's nice to get out and maybe meet people. I was at Casual Habana the other day for my anniversary, and the owner comes out and he talks to you, and it feels so good as a customer, that experience. So if we can get the businesses, all these other businesses in town doing the same thing, and people get excited, and excited customers are going to bring in excited owners. And that's what I think is really important, is get people excited about New Milford. Both us as residents, the governing body, and the businesses as well. Thank you.
But I think, and just to follow up, I think you got to be careful, because there's got to be a balance. I don't think government should dictate, how business goes. We can participate, but ultimately the free market is the one who's going to dictate. And just because a business is there is not necessarily a good thing. I know when I sat on the council, some residents complained about certain businesses in town. So business in and of itself is not necessarily a good thing. Ultimately, the property will be utilized for something else. It can be converted into housing or something. But I think one of your points was that the Chamber of Commerce is not very strong in New Milford. It tends to go in favor of the towns. So obviously, we'll be bringing the Chamber of Commerce back in here and helping us come up with a plan. And ultimately, the free market will dictate what happens. Josie?
We haven't been taxed for the new field. We haven't been taxed for the fire department, the improvements on the fire department. We haven't been taxed for the police station. And we're going to get a new fire truck, plus I'm sure other things that are going on. And so what happens in the future? I mean, we're talking about a new senior center, a new recreation building for the kids. How can we afford all this?
And that's exactly what I was talking about before, about the planning. When the fire department, I think, was probably the first in the series of events that you're talking about. Mike Petrino was the liaison, excuse me, when he was on the council in the past. And there was a need for the fire departments to be rehabilitated or redone or whatever. He was on the committee as the liaison, and they came up with a needs assessment. And ultimately, they determined that fire company number 1 was going to be demolished and reconstructed at $3.1 million. Mike lost that next election, and then Dominic Colucci was elected. Dominic became the fire liaison, and then he picked up the ball from there. And then he learned that fire company number 2 also had certain needs and needed to be rehabilitated. So he formed a second committee. The second committee then made recommendations where they actually rehabbed both firehouses for $2.1 million. So where Mike's plan was $3.1 million, Dom's plan was $2.1 million because of better planning. And it could accommodate the new apparatus that was needed. And don't forget, it's not a difference of $1 million, it'd be more, because it's $3.1 million to build the first house, and you still have to do the second house.
Right.
So it'd be much more than $1 million. That was planned for. The numbers were taken out to $2.1 million. That bond, and that was built a couple of years ago, that bond is finally coming due now. But it's coming due at a time when other debt is being paid off. So you basically pay $500 today for something that's paid off, and you save $500 for something else in the future, so your taxes don't go up. Same thing with the police department. Again, a lot of negative comments with respect to the police department. It's too big. Well, this is planned for 75 years in the future, so you don't have to spend another dollar. The Borough Hall was already jam-packed, and they needed to grow, so they could go into the old police department. It was going to cost too much money. It was going to be cost overruns. They weren't cost overruns. They were complaining about the contractor that was hired, didn't have the experience, but it was done properly. They were talking about delays. There were no delays. So instead of complaining about the negative aspects, we need to work together and moving forward. Same thing as the fire department that was also planned. That, I believe, starts coming due the following year when other debt is being paid off. In terms of Kennedy Field, like I said, there's about $2 million that ultimately we're going to have to pay for. That's $2 million based on what the budget is today, because the original proposal was $3.5 million, ultimately we went up to 2.8, because a lot of things were taken out of that proposal, either because it was too expensive, number one, or number two, Green Acres wasn't going to pay for it. They don't pay for structures and things like that. So the final plan was $2.8 million, of which we got about $800,000. So we owe about $2 million. There is no plan on how to pay for that. So that's one of the things I'm talking about in terms of the proper planning.
I heard that they're going to have a bond for 30 years on that? Is that
I don't know, that hasn't been discussed.
And then in 10 years, that turf field has to be replaced.
That's correct. The lifespan of the turf field is about 10 years. And my understanding is they're supposed to be putting aside $50,000 a year. I think it costs about $500,000 to replace it, so they're supposed to be putting away $50,000 a year. So in 10 years, the money should be there. But we still don't know how it's going to be paid for. And you also indicated about the fire truck. Again, proper planning. We knew when we were building the firehouses that we're going to ultimately have to replace the fire truck. And once you're awarded a grant, you basically have to take it. And once you take it, you have to spend it. So we're committed, because the grant was awarded and it was accepted by the mayor and council. And now we're committed to $600,000 for the balance of that truck, again, with no plan, because all the attention was put on the field, again, which was needed. But you need to plan on how to do it the right way. So my problem is not with the field, 100%. My problem is not with the field committee. The field committee was given artificial parameters by the council, and then the council just accepted the wholesale recommendations without any further discussions. So my problem is not with the committee, it's not with the field. It's a beautiful field, it's being utilized already. It's the process and the planning. So, because people like you, Josie, are gonna ask, how am I gonna pay for this down the road when I get my new tax bill? Mrs. Leonard?
About the field, this past Saturday, it was very crowded, right, and very noisy. The music going and those lights, they are on till after 11 o'clock. Right from my house, I can see them. They're put off shortly, you know, they're not on all night, but they are on after 11 o'clock. Why do they have to use why do they have to put such big lights up there, you know?
Well, that's, I'm not a lighting technician, but I'm assuming that that's the lighting that's recommended by the engineers to be utilized. In terms of the noise, it's funny because I was actually driving down Trotter with Dominic, and we saw Josie and we were talking to her. She was standing next to the vehicle. We had the window open and we were yelling at each other.
Yeah, because of
And we weren't even on the field.
Right.
And there was no game going on. They were still planning for a game that was going on about two hours later. George Adelong was driving around in a little scooter. I believe you guys were complaining to him about the noise. He went back to the field and the music was never turned down.
And I have to say, I went to Mass on Saturday night at Ascension Church. And we came out of Mass, and I said to the people, you hear that noise? It's coming from the field. And Ascension Church is like a distance from that field, and you could hear the noise all the way over there.
Right, and again, I think, I don't know if it would have made a difference, but I think at the very least, if the council would have had a conversation in terms of the planning, that it would have maybe made a difference.
Al, can I just interject?
Yes,
Because I've been in town for 23 years. I have 3 sons, very involved in the community. And at least for 15 of those years, we have been going to council meetings and we're looking for a field. Every other town in Bergen County, pretty much, other than I think Pagoda, was able to come up with a solution and get a turf field, mostly through grant money. And New Milford, this has been an issue for years. I mean, yeah, the field is noisy, there's some music. It is what it is.
oh, and believe me, I understand.
And it's an investment in our community. We want young families, I'm totally for the seniors, okay, totally. My kids will never use that field. I'll be paying for other people's children to play on that field. I look at it as an investment. When people come into this town, they see these recreation services in every other town. They look at that. So we want to attract the right people to our community, and if that's the case, we have to make those investments. So I just want to throw that out there to be fair, because I think you know I've spent a lot of time on it.
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily agree that it's in the right place or how it was done, but the issue of a field in this town is a 15, maybe 20-year-old issue, and it's not rocket science. It's something that every other community has done. They have made those investments. And when people look at your community, New Milford, you want to get excited about New Milford? There you go. That's how you get young, we want to attract young families here.
Right,
And
and
we
I-
do want to keep the great people that are here as well. So just I want to throw that out. Because
Right,
I'm
and-
sitting
and-
here, I mean, it's just to be fair about the whole process.
Correct, and I agree with you, and that's how I met you. I met
Yeah,
you
that's how we met. We
in-
met on a field,
in
talking
2011, talking about fields.
about the crappy flooded fields and all the taxes we were paying and where was the money going and why every other community was coming up with grant money to Teaneck. Go to Teaneck. There's a double turf field over there, paid for by Green Acres grants. We sat on it for years.
Correct,
So
and-
let's be
and-
fair about,
and-
and both Republicans and Democrats sat on that issue.
Right, and I agree with you, and that's when I got involved, was in 2011, when the whole issue came up with the Suez Field, and the reason
Yes.
why I fought Suez was to try to preserve it for fields. And again, my comment was, I'm not against the field, I was against the process and the planning that it underwent. I think it could have been done a lot better, but certain forces were in play, and it got pushed through. We definitely needed it. And in terms of sitting on it, I can tell you that while I was working on it for those couple of years fighting in Suez, when the Democrats did have an opportunity to do something, and I remember when Mike made that maybe vote at that meeting in May of 2013, George Adeline was there. He's one of the guys who was under the impression that Mike was going to vote for rezoning so that he could get his field. He was very upset that Mike did not give him the field that he wanted. So the proper planning comes because one of the first things I did when I got elected was create the field committee to find the location. Because that's on the heels of the Owens issue, David E. Owens Field of Dreams, which that didn't go through. So I said, we have to find a solution. So I created the field committee. We started moving forward with it. It got politicized. And the next thing you know, they formed a second committee, and I got forced out. So I do agree with you that we do need the field. The process and the planning is what I have the problem with. Joanne?
If I can just piggyback, Josie, your question about the noise. At the last mayor and council meeting, and I don't remember the specifics on what was exactly discussed because I kind of got in there a little late and I had a really bad cough. And it was very distracting to me because I was coughing so badly. But a woman who lives in your area made that comment about the noise. And George happened to walk in, and George mentioned something to the effect, and this is not verbatim, so please don't take it that way. He said something about the speakers right now are only a temporary, and Mary, you might know something about it, I don't know, but something about this.
I was also present at that, Mayor.
He said that the speakers are going to be changed, the direction of the speakers are going to be going a different way?
After the meeting,
Mr. Adelon and Mr. Kelly went out to take a look at the field and to discuss, you know, the homeowners' concern. And that Mr. Adelon had mentioned that, you know, it was a temporary speaker system,
Right.
just because it was only like, you know, game 2.
Right,
It's not game 432
right.
with the loud noise.
And that the speakers are
Game
going
two,
to
and
be
that we
facing
have
another
to, as a
direction.
community,
Right,
even I feel, as a community, we need to allow for bugs in the system
mhm,
and to give people proper time to kind of
Fix
work
them.
out the kinks and fix it
mhm.
before we all start, you know, complaining that it's too loud or there's no parking or this, no that. Game 2. And that he did go right outside and try to figure out how to make it
Correct.
less noisy for this Saturday night. I was not at the Saturday night's game, so I don't know if the noise level had gone down for the homeowners in that area, but
So I wanted to put that,
it did go down Saturday night.
I did want to put that out there. Yeah, because I was at that meeting and George and again, I didn't remember everything verbatim, but he did say it was a temporary system. And, you know, like she said, you know, sometimes it takes time to get some kinks out of things, and sometimes it takes input from residents to hear where the dissatisfaction is and give the opportunity to correct it. So,
I
you
just
know,
wanna
input
say-
is good.
This particular neighbor who complained, she said that they could not sit in their house and watch TV. The house vibrates. They cannot sit out in their backyard if they want to with all that noise.
Right, again, I think, and again, piggybacking that we have to, you know, he
Right.
has to get the kinks out of it. And I don't know, do you know when that new system is gonna be put in? Because I know it was temporary.
No, I don't know, I just know that, that resident who had voiced her concern. That they, after the council was over, that both Mr. Kelly and Mr. Catalon went out to try to figure out how he was gonna work on fixing
Well,
that.
the thing is,
I have a question.
excuse me, just let me finish. The thing is, Saturday night, when the volume was down, it was like, I guess they were speaking about the game. But no, in the afternoon, it was this rock music. There was no reason to have rock music at a game
In the afternoon.
in the afternoon. I mean, that music was blasting. And then everyone is telling us, oh, your property will be increased, the value of your property will be increased because you have the field there. Well, these people talked about putting the house up for sale. So,
I think we just need to give it, you know, I think, you know, George.
I mean, I can understand that they're speaking over the loudspeaker, that's fine, you know, they had the intent to say what the, what's going on with the game, what the scores are, fine. But what's with this rock music?
I think it just pumps up the crowd.
And
Huh?
another,
I'm sorry.
Now,
yes, oh, so, go ahead.
I've been in this town since '93. I haven't gotten involved in any politics whatsoever. But as I watch my taxes, and I pay a hell of a lot of taxes, a lot more than most people in my neighborhood. Why 2 fields? If we were getting one for free from the developer. Why 2 fields? I see a sign, I took a walk down there with my dogs and I'm going, it says Green Acres, so it's an assumption that Green Acres paid for that field. But I understand is Green Acres gave us how much?
25%,
And how much did the field cost?
2.8,
Oh, well, let's think about the numbers. Why?
right? Again,
Why, if we had a field coming from a developer at no cost, will we build? And how many towns have 2 fields in this county?
that,
Land coming from a developer, please say that, we
I'm-
have a
I'm-
field coming, thank you.
I'm going to.
So can you just explain that to me? Because, I mean, I'm seeing stuff being done. And you know what? Maybe it's time I do get involved.
Okay, this is, again, goes towards the planning aspect that I keep talking about. When I created the field committee in 2015, Suez was still in litigation. The first phase of the committee was to identify the location or the field that would have been improved. And ultimately, the committee decided that Kennedy Field would be the field to be developed because given its location, the size, the amount of activity on there, it's probably the best bang for your buck and the best use of all the fields in town. We then applied for the Green Acres grants. The Green Acres initially, our grants writer told us that 75% of the field will be covered by Green Acres. So we said, great, 75%, and there was Bergen County Open Space, which would cover almost the balance of it. So it's almost like doing the entire thing for free. So we move forward. We apply for the Green Acres application, we get the letter, we were approved, that's great, 25%, not 75%. And then where the balance was going to be from Bergen County Open Space, we just got the award, I think last month, it was only $125,000. So with that said, as we're moving forward, Suez starts to get negotiated. Now, the negotiations are in closed sessions. So nobody in the public was permitted to know what was happening because it's part of the litigation. I was on the field committee and I was on the negotiation committee. My fellow members in the committee were upset that I was not telling them what was going on Suez because legally I couldn't say anything. So the timing was such that now we were going to have two fields. The field that was going to be provided by the developer, built and everything with $725,000, which initially is supposed to be a rec field, to be added to the borough's inventory of rec fields, which is sorely needed, which is one of the reasons why we moved forward in trying to get better fields. So now we said, okay, great. And this is why earlier I was talking about maybe not having to do the full rehab that we did on Kennedy Field. Since we're going to get this other field, we could put some more money over there and really do a better project. Because of elections, we kind of lost control of the council. The council at the reorg meeting then created a second field committee. The second field committee removed me as the chairman of the committee. They appointed George Adelon as the chairman of the committee. And then they started setting artificial parameters. They moved forward, no hearings, and the field was done. In the meantime, we have a settlement agreement that was approved by the court, which included another field. So now that's why we have the two fields. My understanding now is negotiations between the borough and the Board of Education to possibly lease the field to the Board of Education, which means that we would lose control of it because once they're the leaseholder, they have control over the field. My understanding is also that they want to do a larger type of sports complex on there, which is fine. The problem is that the negotiations that were done was for a rec field to accommodate soccer. Soccer is bigger than a football field. So we're able to accommodate soccer, but obviously the high school wants to do something more, which is great. But from what I've heard, it could be another $3 or $4 million in investment on that field in order to bring it to where they want to have it. So that's where there's a disconnect in terms of the planning and why we have two fields. Tiffany.
As most everybody here knows, I've lived here for 42 years now. The field is in, Kennedy Field is done, my son is playing football on it as we speak. Moving forward, since the field is in, the new governing body, we need to be more fiscally responsible with how we're going to pay for the monies that we still owe on it. Like, the field's not gonna go away, it's in.
Correct.
We're playing on it.
Absolutely.
So I think the discussion of whether we should have had it or didn't have it or whatever, that needs to kind of be a moot point. It's
No, and I agree with you, and that's why I say I have no problem with the
It's
field.
not a moot point when you still have to pay for
No, I'm
it.
not talking about that.
It's not a moot point, because even going forward, there's
Listen,
maintenance and everything else.
Never mind.
So it's not.
Well, my point is,
See, I don't have any children, so, but that doesn't matter. I'm still paying taxes, it doesn't matter. But it's not a moot point when you say,
Well, okay.
it's in already, all right, well,
I'm
the way
saying-
it went in was wrong. So, yes, we have to live with it now.
right, and again,
I'm
my,
not disagreeing that the parameters in which the field went in might not be 100% on the up and up, or however the field went in, but it isn't now. So I'm agreeing with you that, yes, let's now, as we move forward, if you became mayor, to now say, okay, how are we going to actually?
Right, and I agree with you.
I agree with you on
The
that
field-
too,
the
because you
field
have
is in.
senior citizens now, like my parents are senior citizens, and if you take 2.6 million and it's every homeowner is responsible, you're gonna have you're gonna have a group of people that are gonna have a hard time,
Right,
paying their
and
taxes.
definitely, we
when-
needed
So, yes.
fields, we needed
So-
improvement to the fields.
Exactly.
They were done. It's a beautiful field. The kids are using it. They love the field. My point is that that's an indication
Correct,
of how certain people would govern.
correct.
And the inability to properly plan is ultimately going to cost money. So the field was going to get done. Improvements were going to get done. You just got to be smart about it.
Correct. You have to be smart now, moving forward into the future, on how to, better plan so that something like that does not happen in.
Josie, is there somebody new back there? Let me just give her a quick opportunity.
With the anticipated growth of Milford over the next year or so and more residents coming in and businesses, what are your thoughts on either implementing or expanding shared services with other towns in order to control some of the costs?
Well, I know New Milford has considered that on a number of levels. One of the things when we were planning the police department, they were talking about merging the police department, I think it was with Bergenfield or Dumont? With Dumont. Obviously, that didn't work out. I know that the DPW has worked with other towns, and we already have some shared services already in place, and obviously we'll continue to investigate where appropriate to continue to do that.
What about healthcare costs? I mean, if you look at where our taxes have gone in the last 20 years and where healthcare has gone, two married, both
Right.
ends of the table. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of budgeting?
Well,
And is there even a solution? I don't even think there, I don't know.
in terms of the healthcare, our advisor comes in on a yearly basis when we're doing the budget, and he provides us with a report. And we normally have to make adjustments every year, whether it's the employees have to pay a little extra towards their contributions. We have to reduce the amount of the healthcare that is being provided. But ultimately, that's part of the budget every single year. And sometimes it's just something we really can't control. We just do the best based on the advice. And we have Art Coughlin is his name. And he usually comes in and he does a good job for us, and he fights with the insurance companies to try to get us the best plan that he can. But it's definitely a big part of our budget. That and employee salaries. Right?
If I could just interject, public employees now with Christie's new plan that he implemented, I don't know how many years ago, pay 34% if you're topped out, depending on your pay scale. So back when, before the plan was even introduced, many employees were paying nothing or maybe 2%. But now many public employees, including myself and a lot of people I work with, are paying up to 34% of the premium for health insurance for a family member, which is upwards of like $600 a check. So I know that should have alleviated at least some of the stress, financial stress from the borough.
Yeah, and again, that's something that gets addressed every year by the mayor and council when the presentation is made. And then they provide us with several options, and the mayor and council votes on which is the best option at the time for the employees. Ann?
Now, you kind of came to the table a little late when it came to the election process. What was the catalyst that brought you to the table to run?
You mean this
for mayor?
election cycle?
Yeah.
I'm not a politician, okay? I have no aspirations to do anything beyond this. I did it, I got involved because I cared. I think I have the ability to help, given my background as an attorney. I served my one term, which is 3 years. I believe in term limits for everybody. So I didn't leave by choice. I was voted out of office. But I saw what was happening on the council level, and I saw the decisions that were being made. and which a number of the things that I was discussing earlier, and the bad decision-making that was being made, and a lot of it because there was no accountability, there was no transparency. I got a bit of a reputation on the council as not the nice guy, and I believe that when you're sitting on the council, you represent all of New Milford. You're not, yes, you have to be a nice guy, you have to be polite, there's levels of decorum that are expected of you, and I believe that I did all of that. I don't believe I was ever disrespectful to anybody. But if I believed in something, I fought for it, and that's what I do for a living. I'm an advocate. And like, for example, the field, keep going back to the field. When I was talking to different groups throughout the town, including the members of the field committee, they were like, we need this, we want this, we can afford to pay for this, meaning them individually, they can increase, they can pay for the taxes. I go back to the neighbor that I was referring to, you bought her house. Right. And there are a lot of people who can't afford it. So let's get you the fields that you want, but let's protect everybody. So when I decided I was not going to run again, I did my one term. I do own whatever happened at Suez. I'm proud of what happened. I've said back then, it's not the best use of the property at Suez, but it was the best option that we had at the time. That was thrust upon us, and we had to make a decision. We didn't have the luxury as elected officials just to sit back and throw it back at the court, let somebody else make the decision that's going to ultimately determine how you're going to use your town. So under the circumstances, we worked hard, and I remember when I made my vote, Dom almost killed me because it took me an hour to go through my analysis on how I got to my yes vote to reach the settlement agreement, because I went through Facebook. Every post that I remember, everybody who commented on Facebook, I went through the newspapers, I went through the council meetings, every issue that was ever addressed. I identified the issue, I gave the facts as I saw them, I gave the misinformation that I had heard out there, I gave my analysis, and then I made my decision on that issue. And then I went issue by issue by issue, and it was a thorough analysis. And that's why I believe that the settlement was the best option, but not the best use. And when I see what's happening, and I see, based on some of the comments that I made earlier, how our taxes are definitely going to go up. We have a number of things, decisions that are being made that are not proper. I couldn't sit back. I said, you know what, I want to get back up there, and I want to at least fight and try to help steer it and make the right decisions. There's also a perception that I'm a hardline Republican, and I can't be, I don't like to talk to people or deal with people. And that's not true. Well, when Dominic asked me to run the first time, and I met with him, Diego, and the mayor, the first thing I told him is, I'm not a yes man. If you think I'm going to get on the council and just be a yes man and vote down party lines, that's not me. Because in New Milford, it's not about that. It's about making the right decisions. And I was happy when they told me that they weren't either. So, and we worked well together. And when I was on the council with them, we didn't always vote in line. I was outvoted many times, and we outvoted Dom, we outvoted Diego, because we voted in what we felt was in the best interest of New Milford as a whole, and we had our opinions. It doesn't mean that we didn't like each other, we had our opinions. And that's what I like about Joanne and what I like about Jeff, is they all have their own opinions too, and we're gonna work well together.
So speaking of their opinions, what were your catalysts that got you to come to the table?
Again, I've raised my kids, I've always been involved in the community. But I heard that, I think it's very un-American to have one party not have a fight, and somebody's got to run Democrat and somebody's got to run Republican, and that's just the way the world is, and so I said, okay, I don't want the Democrats not to have anybody to oppose, because I think communication is important, and you have to hear fresh ideas and you have to listen to what other people have to say. So everybody thought I was crazy, but I have a son who lives his own life now, and I have a daughter who's in college, and a husband who owns a business that's been around since 1935, and I have a lot of free time, and I said, I've been so involved, why stop now? So I said, you know what, let me see what I can do, let me see if I can try to do something to help. I'm a homeowner too, to try to help and just try to be ears and try to listen and try to find solutions. And I just didn't want somebody to run without a fight. I think that was not what the world is meant to be,
I think Joanne stole my answer, but really, that's how I feel. I was approached very last minute. I mean, I'd been approached prior, but it just wasn't, the timing wasn't right, and started thinking about it a little bit, and I'm like, like Joanne said, this is America. We want choice. We love to have choices. How could we not have a choice in the upcoming, local elections? So I jumped on it. I said, you know what, now I guess is the time. Let's give the residents, you, the voters, a choice. It's not just these people, they're the incumbents, and they just sail right through. Let's give them a little bit of a fight, maybe shake things up a little bit and let people decide what they really want. And now that we're getting into it, I'm like, oh, this I think I could really do well for the town. I have a lot of ideas, running around in my head. I can't always get them out of my mouth like earlier, but if I get voted in, I think I can really help out, and I can help you guys out and help my family out. And that's the main reason why I decided to do it, to get some choice. Right now the balance, if you will, on the council is 5-1, and I don't think that's great that it's 5-1 anyway. It should be as in the middle as it can be. If it can be 3-3 or 4-2 or 5-1, 6-0, nobody wants that. It doesn't really open up for a good discussion. So hopefully, we can get in there and balance things out a little bit and open up some discussions and get some stuff really done instead of just, oh, this is what we're going to do. Oh, we all like it.